A Future in the Past, The Trilogy, by Francisco Zaragoza Esbrí. Third novel, A Past, Present, and Future. Chapter 1. New York, November 10, 2029. I was waiting for your call, Glenn said. How was the reunion at the Congress? Howard asked. Why do you say reunion? Glenn pointed out. The two had never met before. You know my theory, Howard replied. Besides, I'm sure it hasn't escaped David's notice either. Seen from this perspective, you might be right, Glenn finally admitted. And remember, David visited Jennifer in the hospital when she was just a month old to check some of the 40 points of the lotion. You're on top of everything, Howard, Glenn acknowledged. This event is a godsend. All these years of studying time-lapse shots may be definitively confirmed. What if it doesn't end up being that way? Glenn questioned. It won't matter, Howard Moore affirmed. Failure never nullifies efforts. It only redirects them. And how is Martha handling it? She's not clear. She'd love for your theory to be true, but you know she's a staunch follower of pragmatism. But she pointed to love as the reason that explains everything, Howard suggested. Have you gone over to the romantic side? Glenn asked. I've never stopped being one, my friend. I couldn't imagine anything without that dreamlike component. In the 2 months David has been with us, I've seen that he's very reclusive when it comes to his personal affairs, Glenn said. How did you see her? What impression did she make on you, Jennifer? Did she have any positive reaction for our purposes? I still don't know what our goals are, Glenn objected. Close the circle, my friend, Howard replied. Funny, but Martha said the same thing yesterday, Glenn acknowledged. Is she still worried about the limp thing? Yes, and she can't get it out of her head, Glenn stated. You talk to her and reassure her. Tell her not to waste time looking for an explanation for something that surely won't happen, even if it already has. And how would you explain it to her? Glenn wanted to know. I would mention sequentiality. In reality, everything is based and grounded on that concept. So, you think David told us the truth? And what do you imagine the explanation might be? Everything seems to indicate that Martha and you made a trip to the year 2001 to rescue him, and that you happened to be in the same physical location. Describe the main lines of your theory, Glenn asked. I think you didn't achieve the desired success, and that's why Jennifer traveled later with a much more elaborate plan, which also failed, Glenn pointed out. Not entirely, because that led to David's daughter, Evelyn, making the successful trip years later. Is that all? Glenn continued. That only opens the door to new questions. How did David's daughter come to know that Jennifer had traveled back in time and delivered a note with precise instructions? The most plausible explanation is that Evelyn is also Jennifer's daughter, Glenn reasoned. But how would you explain and justify our trip? Martha and Jennifer studied together, Howard explained. And friendship is one of the most powerful forces I know. And our plane crossed with David's, Glenn said. That's right. Chance, coincidence, or destiny meant that for a moment the three of you shared the same plane. You two returned to your time, and he traveled to ours. And how would you explain that disorder? Glenn wanted to know. To sequentiality and the fact that time planes are curved and everything depends on the point of intersection, Howard stated. There could actually be more than one, Glenn specified. Correct, Howard confirmed. We could end up saying that before and after depend on whether you come or whether you go, Howard clarified. I think I can reassure Martha tonight, Glenn said. Chapter 2. New York, Wednesday, November 14, 2029. Hello, sir. I'm Glenn. I just spoke with Jennifer. She asked me for David's phone number. What excuse did she give you? Howard asked. She wants to make an appointment for this coming Saturday, the 17th. To discuss the 2001 attacks with him. Fantastic, Howard exclaimed. One more thing, Glenn announced. David asked me to return the 2 notes. I told him you had them. Tell him it's no problem, Howard replied. But you and I won't see each other until next week. That way we can be sure they won't come to light next Saturday. And then? Glenn asked. After that, it will depend solely on them, or rather, on David. I think that in this first meeting, David will try to find out a lot about her, if not uncover her cards, and I'm sure she'll try to do the same with him. Jennifer is very smart, resourceful, and perceptive, Glenn said. Speaking of intelligent, skilled, and perceptive people, Did you manage to reassure Martha? Howard asked. Only partly. She still doesn't understand why, if we really coincided in that time frame, we would later return to such different times. That happened for two main reasons. First, because your starting points were different, and second, because the bracelets used were also different. This brings us back to Frederick Newman, Glenn said. For now, we'll remain completely silent with Newman. We must wait for developments that will show us the right path to follow, Howard said before hanging up. Glenn knew he hadn't been entirely honest with Howard. Martha had raised many doubts about whether the two of them had the right to keep the truth about David to themselves. Glenn received detailed information from Uncle Sam about the websites, encyclopedias, and pages David visited. All of this had helped Glenn form a more accurate picture of David's personality. If Glenn had to define his new guest, he would have done so with three adjectives: smart, fearless, and unpredictable. Little by little, the idea of playing freewheel games had taken shape as a reliable tool for predicting David's intentions in advance. Freewheel was a mix of Parcheesi and chess. It was played on a 13 by 13 square diamond-shaped board. One player played with 22 yellow pieces, and the other with 22 blue pieces. Each color had 5 main pieces: the boss, the joker, the tower, the runner, and the driver, plus 17 pawns. The game ended when one team hunted down the main piece, the boss. In addition, on the board were 23 green pieces, trampolines, and 23 red pieces, paralyzers. Glenn proposed that the only basic rule of the competition between the two was the following. The winner would be allowed to ask the loser a single question, and the loser would have to answer it as fully as the winner required, always truthfully. The proposal pleased David, and he accepted the challenge, but he asked to postpone the start of the games until next Monday, the 19th. Glenn had no choice but to accept the delay, convinced that David had lived up to his 3 adjectives: fearless, because he had accepted the challenge; intelligent, because he had delayed the start; unpredictable, for its proven capacity to surprise. Chapter 3. New York, Saturday, November 17, 2029. This is Jennifer, Dr. Goodwill, she said on the phone. I've parked on the corner. I'll be waiting for you. Good morning, Jennifer. I'll be right down, David replied. David walked down the stairs, mentally reviewing what he would tell Jennifer if she asked him his age. He had decided to add 5 years to give more credence to what he could tell about the morning of 9/11. David walked toward Jennifer's car, his hands in his pockets to hide his nervousness. Good morning again, David said as he got into the car. We should be on first-name terms, don't you think? Jennifer accepted, offered his hand, and he reciprocated. She was wearing sunglasses as aerodynamic as her car. I thought it would be best to compare opinions if we went to the scene, she suggested. That seems very appropriate, David agreed. Jennifer parked in the village and left her sunglasses in the car. David could see those disturbing black eyes again. They began to walk in silence. David politely let her use his right side. You're very quiet, he said. Your behavior has surprised me, she affirmed. Have I done something inappropriate? David asked fearfully. Sometimes I get carried away by my other great passion, which is none other than psychology, she confessed. Does that mean I'm going to be analyzed at all times? How have you planned your day? David asked. The first thing we'll do is sit on this bench. I want to ask you questions and see your face when you answer. More psychoanalysis? David asked. Did anyone you knew die on 9/11? She asked. Did the attacks leave traces on you that are hard to erase? Yes, definitely, David admitted. Me too, she admitted, surprised. You? How could they have marked you? David exclaimed. Surely you weren't even born that day, he said surreptitiously. Yes, I was born. I was a little over a month old that day, Jennifer affirmed. In that case, you can't even remember it, David opined. Do you believe in coincidences? Jennifer asked. I didn't believe in them, but lately I've started to believe in them, David confessed. A few days after I was born, I was diagnosed with coronary artery disease. My operation was scheduled for the morning of 9/11, but an unexpected event brought the surgery forward a day. But you feel fine now, right? David asked. I'm fine, Jennifer replied. My surgeon says I have no after effects. But let's stop talking about me, Jennifer said. How are the following years? She asked. In the years following the attacks, a kind of collective denial consciousness took hold, and that piqued my interest, David explained. But then everything changed, Jennifer said. Fortunately, time heals all wounds, David affirmed. We should get something to eat, shall we? She suggested. Sounds perfect to me, David agreed. How long have you known Denvers? He asked when they sat down. He was my professor and my examiner for applied cybernetics. The meal passed more between glances than words. May I make a request? She said in a seductive voice when they resumed their walk. I'm eager to please you with anything you ask of me, he replied, completely captivated by those dark eyes. Would you allow me to take your arm? She whispered, with the hidden intention of better gauging his reactions. It will be an honor, David agreed. Are you married? She asked directly. I'm not, are you? He asked, his heart sinking. Me neither, she replied. What theories did you want to test with me? David asked. Do you think the FBI knew the attacks were going to happen? She asked directly. I think they did have some clues, but they didn't know how, when, or where, David replied. Do you think the terrorists chose the impact floors to make the towers collapse? She asked. I don't think so. My opinion is that everything went much better than they had planned, he opined. And what do you think of the theories that cast doubt on the veracity of the official version? Jennifer continued. I've studied them all, David said. And what are your conclusions? Jennifer asked. I rule out actions perpetrated by drones and missiles. And what about the one that maintains that the explosions were caused from inside the towers? That would lead us to consider that the presence of commercial aircraft was simply a setup. It's a hypothesis that would involve many people. That's true. It seems like too many people to keep quiet and controlled for so long, Jennifer agreed. That's right, David said as Jennifer's car arrived. We should meet again, she said as she activated the remote door release. I'm at your complete disposal, he replied. What do you think about next December 15th? She suggested. It's almost a month away. Are you that busy? I know it's 4 weeks away, but on Wednesday, December 12th, I have to give a presentation in Illinois. What will the presentation cover? David asked. The title is very bombastic. The relationship between transducers and magnetostriction. In that case, I suggest we meet the Sunday before. That is, on the afternoon of the 9th, for a couple of hours. That way, you can give me a personalized introduction. Do you want to hear a monumental speech that doesn't suit you at all? She asked. It will be a very useful rehearsal for you. And I'll warn you now that I'll respond to anything I'm not convinced about. I accept your proposal, Jennifer finally said. The return trip was marked by silence. They said goodbye with a long, heartfelt handshake. Their hands refused to part. See you on December 9th at 4 in the afternoon, he said. I'll pick you up right here, she said as her fingers slipped from David's hand in a last, fruitless attempt to prolong the contact. David entered Martha and Glenn's house. No one was there. He took a shower and relaxed. It had been an emotionally charged day. He needed to analyze it calmly. Little by little, he connected in his mind all the hypotheses he had been imagining and constructing. The result brought a pleasant smile to his face. Chapter 4. New York, Monday, November 26, 2029. David had retrieved the 2 original messages and put them in his wallet. The freewheel games had gradually taken center stage. Of the 6 games played, David had only won the last one. Glenn, in his right as a winner, had focused his 5 questions on the details of Martha's ankle and David's feelings, before and after his time travel. David won the 6th game thanks to some distraction maneuvers performed with the Joker. David remembered that when he exercised his right to ask questions, Glenn had been very evasive in his answers. What does she know about all this? David had asked as winner. She? Who is she? Glenn had tried to mislead. I'm referring to Jennifer, David specified. What does she know? About what? The loser continued rambling. About everything you and Howard are working on. I don't know what you're talking about, Glenn replied again. I'll be more specific about my questions, as long as it doesn't affect the scope of my original question, David had said. Okay, Glenn finally agreed. Did Jennifer know she would meet with me at the Congress? No, Glenn responded succinctly. Does she know anything about the existence of either of the notes? No, Jennifer doesn't know anything about either of the notes. You had something to do with our meeting last Saturday, November 17th. Absolutely not. Am I to understand that she was the one who freely contacted you and asked for my phone number? Absolutely, yes, Glenn had confirmed during his obligatory turn to answer before leaving. David was alone in the house and was also convinced that from now on the freewheel games would become less frequent. David decided to go talk to Uncle Sam. "Hey, buddy." He waved his hand over the green screen. "Hi, David. I love the way you treat me," said Uncle Sam. "I didn't know you could express likes or dislikes," said David. "I'm a little surprised, too, but the truth is I'm starting to appreciate situations and feelings." "And in my case, what feelings do I provoke in you?" David asked. "I like you," the macro computer confessed. David couldn't suppress a slight laugh, which didn't go unnoticed by Uncle Sam. "I don't have the ability to laugh yet," Uncle Sam reported. "I'm sure you'll soon develop your own subroutines for that," David assured. "Now for the questions." "I'm at your complete disposal," said Uncle Sam. "Is Howard Moore Jennifer Bailey's father?" "I don't know," the macro computer replied. "What is the relationship between Dr. Newman and Jennifer Bailey?" "Only doctor-patient," reported Uncle Sam. "And what about Glenn Denvers and Howard Moore?" "They both belong to a select group of researchers." "Researchers of what?" David asked. "All my information is limited to the name of the organization and its associative purpose." "What's the name of the organization?" "The Rainbow Travelers," said Uncle Sam. "And what do they do?" David asked again. "Time travel trials," said Uncle Sam. "Thanks, buddy. That's enough for today." "I'll try to get my things in order," said David. Chapter 5. New York, Thursday, November 29, 2029. The day dawned rainy. When David went down to breakfast, he ran into Martha. "Good morning," he greeted her upon seeing her. "Good morning, David," she responded. "You'll have the house to yourself for the entire weekend." "What a treat," David exclaimed. "Where are you going?" he asked next. "Glenn should already be at the airport. He's participating in a conference on the West Coast the day after tomorrow, and I'm going to Alabany to see my sisters." "Why don't you meet up with Jennifer?" she suggested directly and pointedly. "Jennifer isn't available. She's very busy preparing a presentation. After much insistence, I got her to agree to give me a presentation on Sunday, December 9. That's a sure sign that she's interested in you. I don't know if you know that I lived with her for a few years before I joined Glenn's romantic life. I can boast that I know her better than anyone." "You surprise me," David managed to say with difficulty. "I suppose the only thing she's interested in about me is my opinion. It's obvious she wants to know your opinion, but what she's most interested in is being able to read the depths of your eyes." "Another psychoanalysis session?" David exclaimed. "Your words confirm my theory. What did she do to you?" "She took my arm as we walked," he confessed. "It's one of her signature specialties, and it shows that her interest in you goes far beyond just knowing your opinion. See for yourself." "I don't think it's right to call her," David said. "Don't do it. Go see her unannounced. Here's her address in Jersey City. You can invite her to dinner, taking advantage of the fact that tomorrow is Friday. Aren't you assuming many things that, for me, are still unknown?" "My feminine intuition tells me not to." "Be brave, David, and lock the house properly when you leave," Martha said as she left. David spent Thursday night plucking his own petals, trying to find an answer. Friday morning wasn't much different. David made his decision at 4:00 p.m. Through Uncle Sam, he reserved a table for two at the Light Horse Tavern. He rented an SUV and headed for Jersey City by 6:00 p.m. He was crossing the Hudson River, driving through the Lincoln Tunnel, and just before 7:00 p.m., he parked the car in front of Jennifer's house. His heart was beating a mile a minute when he noticed the lights upstairs were on. He rang the doorbell and waited patiently. "Dr. Goodwill. I mean David. What a surprise. Don't stand by the door. It's freezing at this hour." "I thought we could have dinner together tonight," David said. "I don't have much in the refrigerator, but I'm confident we can arrange something," Jennifer replied. "I have reserved a table for two at 8 o'clock this evening at the Light Horse Tavern." "Without telling me?" she exclaimed, very surprised. "I apologize if I bothered you," he managed to say. "How did you know it's one of my favorite restaurants?" "Uncle Sam suggested it to me. You know, Glenn's computer." "And where are they?" Jennifer asked. "Professor Denvers is in Anaheim at a conference, and Martha is visiting her sisters in Albany." Jennifer didn't say anything, but David's last sentence had confirmed all her suspicions because Martha was an only child. "What time did you say you reserved the table?" 8, he replied. "Only 40 minutes left." "I'm going to get ready," he said, going upstairs. Have something to drink while the kitchen is at the end of the hall." 20 minutes later, David watched Jennifer come down the stairs in a dazzling black dress. "Won't you be cold?" was all he could manage to say. "Don't you like it?" she asked. "I like it a lot, and you look gorgeous," David said. "I have the car in front of the house, but don't go out without wrapping up warm." "You're not doing anything," she exclaimed when she saw the SUV. "It's a rental. I have to return it Sunday afternoon." Dinner was a combination of exquisite sensations. The service and the atmosphere were perfect. During the drive back, Jennifer surprised David. "Stay overnight," she said without warning. David's face showed such bewilderment that she quickly qualified the proposal. "It's not a good idea to drive to Martha's house now to be alone. The room Martha was occupying is free at my house. That way, tomorrow, we could take a walk together and talk." "I admit I'm enticed by your proposal," David confessed. "It's a very meaningful proposal," Jennifer affirmed. "In fact, I suggest you stay until Sunday. It's the same for one night as two, and you'll be able to explain more to me. I'm not very good at recounting my experiences. Sometimes time passes without me noticing, and it confuses me." "You talk as if you were 70 years old," she said. "Don't think I'm so far away," David said. "Don't talk nonsense. Are you staying or not?" she asked. "Yes," David finally answered. David turned off the light in Martha's old room, concentrating all his efforts on remembering the face of the saleswoman who had visited his mother in October 2000. The clock on time indicated that almost 30 years had passed, but for him, only a few months had passed. The lotion's note was clear and left no room for doubt, but he needed to be absolutely sure before making even the slightest confession about his real past. Meanwhile, less than 10 meters away, a silent phone conversation, via text messages, was crossing the airwaves. "Jennifer, you don't have any sisters." "Martha, no one can be sure of that. Where is David?" "Jennifer, here." "Martha, perfect." "Jennifer, in your old room." "Martha, that doesn't seem so perfect to me." "Jennifer, why did you do it?" "Martha, David is a special person." "Jennifer, how special?" "Martha, that's for you to find out." "Jennifer, you're full of secrets. You used to be my friend." "Martha, I still am. Time will explain everything." "Jennifer, what do you know that I don't?" "Martha, many things." "Jennifer, you weren't so cruel before." "Martha, talk to David, Jenny." The message conversation ended. While he tried to remember, she was only trying to imagine. While he struggled to capture an image of the past, she let her thoughts run wild, placing no limits on her imagination of the future. Chapter 6. New York, Monday, December 10, 2029. Jennifer and David had repeated the same meeting schedule as last weekend. David was returning to the Denver's home after accompanying Jennifer to Newark Airport. She had flown to Chicago for her presentation. The freewheel game scoreboard was still 5-1. David wanted to improve it to minimize Glenn's strutting. He arrived at the house with concern written all over his face. Glenn and Martha sensed it immediately. "You've become inseparable," Glenn said. "I feel very good around her," David acknowledged. "Have you told her where you're from yet?" Martha asked. "I haven't yet, but it won't take long for this weekend. Although I'm afraid of her reaction when she finds out the truth," David said. "Jennifer is a very pragmatic person and tireless in achieving her goals," Martha explained. "And you think I'm one of them?" David asked. "You're her #1 target," Martha affirmed. "Don't doubt it for a moment," she added forcefully. "Will you show her the lotion note she gave your mother for you to read?" Glenn asked. "Only if it's absolutely necessary for her to believe me." "And your daughter's note?" Martha wanted to know. "If I bring up the lotion note, I'll have to show her the chocolate bar note later. When I tell her, I don't want to hide anything." "I completely agree with you," Martha stated. "I understand and respect your decision," Glenn finally admitted. Newark Airport, Thursday, December 13, 2029. The plane landed at 5:20 p.m. "How did it go?" David asked as he kissed her on both cheeks and unloaded her from her carry-on bag. "You were a great help on Sunday when you offered to ask me questions," Jennifer confessed. "Did I get any of them right?" David asked. "You got them all right," she replied, smiling. "I'm really surprised," he admitted, "and I'm extremely grateful," she replied. "What do you feel like doing?" David asked. Just get home, take a shower, and sleep for 20 hours straight, Jennifer replied. Okay, David agreed, somewhat disappointed. Don't be mad. I've been thinking about us a lot these past few days. I need a break until Saturday afternoon. Don't rent a car. I'll pick you up at 5 p.m. It'll be as you say, David agreed, much more animated. It's just that I have a lot of things to do, and I have to do them alone, Jennifer added. Didn't you tell me you just wanted to sleep? He asked. I lied to you. I'm a big mouth who can't keep quiet. But you'll have to wait until Saturday to find out what I'm up to, she affirmed. You intrigue me, David said. Intrigue isn't bad because it sharpens your wits, she said as she surprisingly and gently kissing David on the lips for the first time. He waited for her to enter the house and for the upstairs lights to come on. An avalanche of sensations washed over him. First, a pleasant surprise. Second, a surge of adrenaline. And third, a growing fear in the face of the harsh reality he wanted and needed to tell her. He started the car, drove through the Lincoln Tunnel, and headed for Glenn and Martha's house. He smiled broadly as he passed Columbus Circus. The parallel with the Admiral on the monument was perfect, because he, too, had just discovered a new world. Chapter 7. New York, Saturday, December 15, 2029, 5:00 p.m. David got into the car and grabbed Jennifer's. After the kiss, David grabbed Jennifer's hand and placed a ring on her ring finger. I hope it doesn't bother you while driving, David said. Are you that sure of your feelings? She asked. I'd do whatever it took to be by your side. Today, I want to tell you a lot about myself. It's raining a lot, David added. Where can we talk alone and in peace? I know an Irish pub in the New World Trade Center. Perfect, David answered, convinced there was no more appropriate place to reveal his secret. Jennifer couldn't stop staring at the ring. Her gaze was focused on her hands. What are you thinking about? David asked. I was thinking about where you could have been all this time. The truth is, if after answering your questions, you're still by my side, I'll be the happiest man in the world. Has your life been so tumultuous? Have you ever been married? Do you have children? Can I ask you a favor? He asked. Of course, she replied. I want you to let me tell you my story, and I ask you not to interrupt, no matter how strange and implausible it may seem to you. If after listening to me you decide to leave, I'll understand. It will hurt me a lot, but I'll understand. Jennifer's face reflected concern at David's strange preamble. Please start, she requested. Let's go back to Tuesday, September 11, 2001. Jennifer nodded. It was a few minutes after 8:00 a.m. when I entered the North Tower where I worked. I wasn't 9. I was already 33, David said, looking her in the eyes. That day I didn't go up to the offices. I left the building through the back of the ground floor. I did it following recommendation number 24 on a note hidden in a shaving lotion that a messenger had given my mother a few months earlier. Are you kidding me? She asked between sobs. Do you expect me to believe? I only intend to tell you the truth. I know what I've told you is difficult to accept. However, what I'm about to tell you now is even more. Later, I'll show you the proof and answer your questions. As you wish, she said with resignation. The note in the lotion consisted of 40 short messages. Some were purely situational. Others clearly referred to me. There were also those that defined the messenger. Others were predictions of events. And finally, the instructions for traveling to the future. I can't believe this, she sobbed again. How can you be so cruel? If you want to leave me, you don't have to make this up. I don't want to leave you, he said. Look at your hand. I just put a ring on it. I want to be with you forever, but to do that, you have to know the whole truth. Jennifer's face was distraught. She couldn't process everything David was saying. Please continue, but allow me to interrupt you. Okay, David agreed. But let's go back to October 20, 2000. That day, the courier delivered the lotion to my mother. I arrived just as they were testing creams on my mother's face. Were you able to see her? Did the messenger pretend to be a beauty products saleswoman? Did your mother deliver the lotion to you? Yes, and I kept it in the bathroom cabinet. Did you read the note before putting the bottle away, or did you discover it later by chance? No, dear. I discovered it after deciphering an encrypted note inside a chocolate bar that a flight attendant gave me on the flight from Tampa to New York in late August 2001. Jennifer was once again taken aback. Are you writing a science fiction novel? Was the flight attendant another messenger? Yes, definitely, David replied. David showed her the encrypted message first, and immediately the version with the 5 deciphered sentences. Was your mother's name Evelyn? And do you have a daughter with that name? Jennifer asked. My mother's name was Evelyn, and I don't have a daughter by that name yet, but it looks like I will, he replied. My God, David, Jennifer exclaimed. How can you accept everything so calmly? She said. I have no choice. I'm here, David said. Do Martha and Professor Denvers know anything about all this? They both know everything. I showed up in their basement on September 11th of this year. They were waiting for me with Howard Moore, David explained. Wait a minute, Jennifer asked. Did you say they were waiting for you? How could they have known you were coming? David recounted Glenn's leap into the future and his surprise at finding him talking to Uncle Sam. Does Professor Denvers travel to the future? She asked. Glenn and Howard Moore belong to a secret organization that operates for scientific research purposes. But let me ask you a question first, to get your opinion before we continue. Go ahead with your question. Jennifer agreed. Do you think the lotion messenger and the chocolate bar hostess might have some connection to each other? I have no idea, she replied. Do you know what year the lotion messenger left? Do you have any idea about his identity? Yes, David replied. The lotion messenger left in the year 2034, and her identity is clearly defined in the note. Is the lotion note also encrypted? No, it isn't, David replied, knowing the crucial moment was approaching. Can I read it? Jennifer asked. Of course you can. Here it is, David said. Jennifer began to read the note. When her eyes read the 11 and 12, she looked up. David was crying silently. You've always known, haven't you? She asked. Yes, he confirmed after swallowing. Martha, Glenn, and Howard know it too. I couldn't go any longer without you knowing it too. Wait a moment, Jennifer said. Now, I understand your previous question. Were you trying to tell me that your daughter Evelyn is also my daughter? Indeed, he confirmed again. My God! And to think I thought I was going to surprise you this afternoon, she exclaimed. I love you, Jennifer. Continue reading the note to the end. Jennifer prepared to do what David had asked. She looked up again when she read 22. Did you come see me at Greenville Hospital? She asked. Yes, and I spoke to your mother, he admitted. I tried to reassure her and give her hope. So it was you, Jennifer exclaimed. My mother always told me about a visitor who went to the wrong room. Were you also able to see Dr. Newman? I saw him, but I didn't speak to him. On Monday the 10th, I called him to find out how the surgery had gone, and when he confirmed it was a success, I hung up. Please continue reading. When she finished reading the 40 messages, she asked, Who is Popey? Meet my traveling companion, David said, making his pet poke his head out. Martha and Glenn are expecting us for dinner. They want to see your face after knowing the truth. I want to see them too. They'll hear me, Jennifer said. Don't be too hard on them, David said. Now I want to ask you to accompany me somewhere. There's still an hour and a half until dinner. I want to pay tribute to my mother. Why didn't you let her know you were okay? I called her twice that day and left a message. However, I don't think it did much good, since I'm on the list of those who died. Come on, Jennifer agreed. When they reached the glassed-in area, David found her name. He placed his fingers on it and ran them over it several times. Why do you do that? She asked. I can imagine how many times she did it. Through the barrier of time, I think this is the closest I'll ever get to her. What you just did and said was very nice, but your last sentence made my legs tremble like leaves on a tree before they fall. Well, get ready because that's going to be the main topic of dinner tonight, David pointed out. How dangerous, Jennifer concluded. Chapter 8. Jersey City, Sunday, January 6, 2030. Exactly 2 weeks had passed since David had moved in with Jennifer in her Jersey City home. The dinner party at the Denvers' house on December 15th was known among them as Revelation Day. Howard had kept his distance during this time, preferring to let the 4 young people form their own theories, even if they didn't strictly adhere to the one he'd already formed. I want you to explain your theory to me again before Martha and Glenn arrive for lunch, Jennifer asked. Which one? David asked. The one that explains that you and I have already lived together in another dimension or another time plane, Jennifer said. I base it on 2 sets of basic, verified facts, David began. The first is based on the certainty of the lotion's messages, which refer to me, you, 9, 11, and especially to Popey. And the second group? Jennifer continued. The second is the central node of my theory, since it also supports the first group, David explained. Stop beating around the bush and be more specific, she said. Points 4, 5, and 6, despite being the only ones that can't be verified, are the ones that give full credibility to those that can, David continued. Please go on, Jennifer asked. They specify that I had already traveled to the future. The note is from 2034, and it's clearly intended to prevent something from happening to me that happened on my first arrival. And where does your theory place me? I know that for you, sequentiality always explains everything. I admit I have an advantage, David asserted. What kind of advantage? Jennifer protested. The one that comes from being able to see the flight attendant's eyes. After seeing them, I have no doubt she was our daughter. Mine, the note says so, and yours because her eyes give her away. What did she look like? Jennifer asked, letting her uncontrollable maternal and feminine curiosity take over. I was very struck by the fact that she never took her eyes off me. I even remember mentioning it to my mother that night. And how do you explain that time hasn't passed for you? Consider that, even though we're in January 2030, for me it's only been a scant 4 months since my arrival. But you argue that this current arrival of yours is not only not the first, but also not the second. True, according to my speculations, this should be at least the third, David affirmed. And despite everything, you still haven't aged, Jennifer said. Howard will explain this topic much better than I can. And by the way, speaking of Howard, I presume his disappearance from the scene these past few days is due to a well-thought-out tactic. You've become very theatrical in your comments, she opined. I think Howard is preparing the appearance of a new character on the scene who won't be secondary, but quite the opposite, David anticipated. If you know who it is, tell me his name, she asked. Dr. Frederick Newman, David replied. What does Dr. Newman have to do with all this? Jennifer asked. He's also the subject of a part of the lotion note. In it, there were some novel instructions for your surgical procedure that were unknown in 2001. I take it someone sent him instructions for me to perform a futuristic operation, Jennifer asked. I think he sent them himself. What I don't know is whether his involvement ends there, or if he has some other connection I'm not aware of. Oh my God, help me. Jennifer sighed. Today's meeting is really going to be a lot of fun. Chapter 9. New Jersey, Thursday, January 17, 2030. You were absolutely right, Jennifer admitted to David. We're invited to Howard's house for dinner on Sunday. See? It hasn't even been 2 weeks since I told you. Martha told me that besides the 4 of us and the host, there will also be a surprise guest. Dr. Frederick Newman, David stated solemnly. Martha thinks like you too, Jennifer confessed. I don't think Newman knows everything that's happened to me and where I came from, David opined. I told him about you myself last Friday, she informed him. But I'm sure you didn't tell him anything about where I'm from. No, of course not, Jennifer confirmed. It's clear that after your words, my presence next Sunday will no longer be a surprise to Newman. I'm sure Howard will have prepared his strategy, and he'll also have a backup plan in place, in case he needs to use it. Is Howard Moore the great strategist? Jennifer asked. Of this group of people, yes, David stated emphatically. New York, Sunday, January 20, 2030. You're welcome, Howard greeted as he opened the door for them. Let me tell you, you make a wonderful couple. Have Martha and Glenn arrived yet? Jennifer asked. Yes, they arrived 15 minutes ago, Howard reported. They didn't have to cross any rivers underground. And the surprise guest? Jennifer asked again. He'll be here soon. He's usually always very punctual. Do you want something to drink, or should we wait for? Howard couldn't finish his sentence. The doorbell rang insistently. After half a minute, Dr. Newman appeared in the dining room and greeted the rest of the guests. I'm going to call the restaurant to let them know that your meal is ready, Howard said. I hope I made the right choice of dishes. After the meal, with glasses of bourbon in hand, the real purpose of the meeting began to come into focus. Do you recall anything unusual happening in the days leading up to 9/11/2001? Howard asked Newman. The Sunday before 9/11, I received a letter with instructions to operate on the little girl in room 317. It also told me that the operation should be moved up to Monday, the 10th. Did you doubt the veracity of the letter? Howard insisted. No, I didn't do it because it contained my secret code. It was a code that changed every year, and only I knew it. It was the same code I used to sign off on my other great passion, Newman explained. Time travel, Howard pointed out. Until today, you, Howard, were one of the few people who knew my secret, Newman said, looking at the four guests. I know, but you shouldn't worry about them, Howard said. Those four have known it for a few months now, too. Do you remember David's face? Howard continued relentlessly. When I greeted him, I had the feeling I'd seen him before, but I don't know where or when, Newman said. And you, David, had you ever seen Dr. Newman before? Howard asked. I was able to see him on Sunday, September 9, 2001. I was also the one who sent him the note, David reported. Frederick Newman couldn't believe what he was hearing. Good, Howard said, standing up. I think at this point, David should explain to Dr. Newman how and when he came to us, he added. However, first I want Frederick to clarify the year to which his mutant code belongs, Howard asked. The year 2034, Newman responded promptly. Everything is starting to take shape, the host said. I recognize that we are still far from knowing the linear sequence of what happened, but we must try to find out. Go ahead, David, Howard said. David took the floor. Slowly and calmly, she recounted her entire story, supported by the messages from the lotion and the chocolate bar, up to the moment she pressed the red button on the bracelet. Can I stop for a moment? Newman asked. Can I see the bracelet you used? Here it is, Howard said. Newman inspected it from every angle and asked, Is the bracelet in the same condition as when you removed it from the false bottom of the lotion? What exactly do you mean? David asked. Did you modify or add anything that wasn't there? Dr. Newman asked. No, and no, David replied categorically. I'll confess that I'm currently working on a bracelet model that could be described as embryonic if I compare it to the bracelet Howard gave me. If we believe the lotion's note, we're still 4 years away from 2034, David argued. Tell us a bit about the differences, Glenn asked. The first is that the current bracelet is a two-way bracelet. The one David used, on the other hand, is only a one-way bracelet. The meeting continued to discuss differences and to clarify irrefutable and contrasting facts from the two messages, attempting to construct a narrative of what happened. I'd like to emphasize that all the key players in that possible story are here today, Martha pointed out. You forgot Popey, David said, making his pet appear, and another person who, although one of the main characters for obvious reasons, still can't be with us here today, Jennifer said nostalgically. Are you referring to Evelyn? Martha asked, hugging her friend in a gesture full of complicity and tenderness. We'll never know the whole story for sure. We can only make guesses without ever knowing how close or how far we've come, Glenn stated. Before we end the meeting, I'd like to offer you a gift. It's very unusual, but I think you'll like it, Howard announced. Howard Moore looked at his watch and said, My surprise guest should have arrived by now. Everyone exchanged glances, trying to figure out if any of them knew anything. The surprised faces confirmed that no one knew anything. Everyone exchanged glances, trying to figure out if any of them knew anything. The surprised faces confirmed that no one knew anything. Everyone exchanged glances, trying to figure out if any of them knew anything. The surprised faces confirmed that no one knew anything. Everyone exchanged glances, trying to figure out if any of them knew anything. The surprised faces confirmed that no one knew anything. After a few minutes, Howard reappeared in the room, accompanied by a very smiling young woman. Jennifer, David, I have the great pleasure of introducing you to your future daughter. This is Evelyn, and she can explain everything to us. Chapter 10. New York, Sunday, January 20, 2035, 34 p.m. Evelyn's unexpected appearance sparked a series of hugs, kisses, and tears that were difficult to control. I think I owe you an explanation, Howard said when calm was restored. 4 days ago, I received an unexpected visit from this young woman. When I opened the door, my heart leapt. Her resemblance to Jennifer was so evident it paralyzed me. She gave me 2 kisses, and I invited her in. She told me how she had located and chosen me, and then she recounted her entire experience. I admit I wasn't very surprised. However, she revealed a fact I hadn't anticipated, and that puts us all in serious danger. The smiling faces of everyone present changed radically with Howard's last words. My decision was immediate, and I summoned you to today's meeting. I think the time has come for her to explain everything to you. Actually, today for me is Sunday, August 2, 2054, and I'm here to right an injustice that has shaped my mother's life and my own. Evelyn began. I'm here because more than 11 years ago my father took a trip from which he hasn't returned yet, Evelyn emphasized. But let's return to the beginning of my story. I was born in November 2030, but I didn't get to meet my father until December 2043. During those first 12 years of my life, it was very difficult for me to understand the reason why he wasn't by our side. I must have been about 5 years old when one day my mother told me, "I've done everything in my power to correct this situation. All that's left is to trust in divine providence." This revelation further fueled my desire to know the truth, and I went to Aunt Martha, Evelyn said, looking at the aforementioned woman. This is the full account Aunt Martha gave me. Your father escaped the 9/11 attacks of 2001 with his life. He carried out his experiment and turned up 28 years later without documentation and was confined on Ellis Island. Uncle Glenn saved him and hid him in our house. 2 months later, he introduced him to your mother at a conference. They fell in love, and months later, you were born. History repeats itself, David said, interrupting his daughter. Please listen to Evelyn. Howard intervened. She will give us the key to the story. Evelyn resumed the story Aunt Martha had told her on that hot August afternoon in 2040. On March 8th, 2030, Jennifer, your mother, fell ill. On March 8, 2030, Jennifer, your mother, fell ill. Dr. Newman revealed her early pregnancy and that the operation would be very risky due to the outdated techniques used in 2001. When your father learned of the problem, he decided to return to his past to deliver a letter to Newman with new surgical instructions and the need to move up the operation to Monday the 10th. I'm sure he did it out of love, risking never being able to see her again and never getting to know you. I too affirm that history repeats itself, Newman said, but always with differentiating nuances, Howard insisted. From that moment on, Evelyn explained, my life unfolded in periods that can be defined by themselves. The first ran from that hot afternoon until my father's arrival in December 2043. I christened it Hope and Excitement. The second was Fulfillment. I felt fulfilled by having my father, my mother, Uncle Glenn, and Aunt Martha. My only obsession was participating in the bourbon gatherings. Evelyn's last comment made the four in question exchange glances, pleasantly surprised. This second period was wonderful, but it only lasted 6 months. The third wasn't so wonderful. It was the period of despair and lasted 4 days, from June 4th to June 8th, 2043. Exactly. Tell us a little more about that 4-day period, Howard asked. According to my mother, on June 4th, my father traveled back in time to speak with Patrick Emmerichs. He was supposed to return that same day, but he never returned. I went up to the attic and found the bracelet labeled Game Over, Evelyn explained. What happened on June 8, 2043? Jennifer asked. That day, we received bad news and a surprise. The bad news was the death of Dr. Newman, and the surprise was that we received a package addressed to my father and sent by Dr. Newman himself. I want to state for the record that the cause of Dr. Newman's death was a bite from one of his guinea pigs. Impossible, the victim said. That's what I thought, Evelyn confirmed. But back then, I couldn't do anything, and I decided to close the period of despair. I'm not going to dwell on all my efforts during the fourth period, defined by effort, study, and improvement. I'll just say that I completed my PhD in astrophysics. At that moment, the fifth period began, and I'm still in it. I've already dubbed it the Justice Period, and its goal is none other than to reverse the situation. The comments were abuzz. Howard urged calm. We must be aware that Evelyn's presence here today is a triumph of her perseverance and proof that she will succeed. However, we must not forget the danger that still looms over us all. What danger are you talking about? David asked. The one who caused all your troubles, Howard replied. His name is Scott Evans, and I think we've unfortunately already made a grave mistake with him, Howard confessed. Who the hell is Scott Evans? David exclaimed. I do know who Scott Evans is, Glenn admitted with a grimace. Chapter 11. New York, Sunday, January 20, 2030, 7:37 p.m. I'm going to read you the letter that Evelyn brought us again today. According to what she herself told me, although it's addressed to David, I sent it to the four of you in June 2037. Howard began reading his own letter. Dear David, when you read these words, my greatest wish will have been fulfilled. You'll wonder if it's necessary to be alive for this. The answer is yes, but it's not always essential. In the following lines, you'll find a chronological account. I assure you, it's an exact copy of my personal diary. In closing, I just want to let you know that I'm sure we'll see each other again. A big hug, Howard. Amazing, David said. Wonderful, Martha said. Touching, Jennifer said. Very like you, Howard, Glenn acknowledged. It's you in pure essence, Newman admitted. Saturday, March 9, 2030 p.m. David has just departed on his return trip. The arrival coordinate beam points to this location. This way, we can ensure that when he returns, he'll appear in this room. I've noticed that the energy consumption has been low. I think I know why, and it scares me. I need to check what I wrote a few years ago when the house that is now Leroy's was my own home. Who was Leroy? David asked. It was my nom de guerre when I was a student, Glenn clarified. Tuesday, April 8, 2008. I was very surprised to see a man materialize in the corner of this room. The man is very weak. I don't know if he'll be able to hold out for long. His clothing is normal. Wednesday, April 9, 2008. I've canceled all my appointments. I'm staying with the man who just arrived. He seems to be recovering, albeit very slowly. I need to know where he came from. Thursday, April 10, 2008. We've made progress. He's starting to talk. I think I figured out his name is John. Sunday, April 20, 2008. His name is John Carpenter. The story he tells is mind-blowing. He says he was trapped in the Twin Towers. He doesn't know what happened to him. He says he was with a colleague named David. He gets very upset when I talk to him about this. This doesn't make any sense, David interrupted. I beg you to wait until the end, Howard replied. Friday, April 25, 2008. John is dead. I have fulfilled his last wishes. I have scattered his ashes in the Hudson River. Saturday, April 26, 2008. I just returned from Ground Zero. I checked out John's story. Everything he told me was true. He worked for a company called Whitehall. One of his assistants was David Goodwill. They are both on the official list of victims. Why did John Carpenter show up at my house? I hope to know the answer someday. Satisfied? Howard asked, looking at David. It's mind-blowing, David agreed. But why don't I remember anything? He added. This is one of the unknowns that needs to be resolved before Evelyn returns to her time. That is, to the year 2054, Howard stated. We can't leave here today without having everything defined. The future of all of us is at stake here today, he added. I agree, said Frederick Newman. Absolutely necessary, confirmed Glenn and Martha. I sense the surprises aren't over, said David. Continue reading, Howard. Wednesday, December 12, 2029. Leroy told us about David Goodwill today. My heart skipped a beat. I hope I've been able to conceal it well enough. For now, I don't want to reveal my secret. Saturday, December 15, 2029. I met David Goodwill. He claims to have traveled alone. I don't think that guy is lying. But then, I don't understand. I'm going to continue not revealing John's secret. Howard put the letter aside and said, A couple of hours ago, some of you commented that history repeats itself. It wouldn't be unreasonable to think that on that occasion, Glenn also made one of his leaps into the future and met David. But now, listen carefully to the following 5 notes because the key pieces of the story are starting to emerge, Howard announced. Monday, March 18, 2030. I think I have an idea of why everything happened. Jennifer's surgery at Newman's hands was a success. She will recover without any after effects. What I don't know is what will happen when she finds out that David may never be able to return to our time. Thursday, March 21, 2030,000. I called Emmerich's to call an extraordinary meeting of the Rainbow Travelers. My conclusions indicate that David will not be able to return. I have to convince them so I can send him help. Friday, March 22, 2030. The meeting lasted until dawn. My proposal was approved by an absolute majority, but the first volunteer to undertake it was Scott Evans. I felt compelled to vote in favor, but I'm wary of him. Tomorrow he'll depart on a 48-hour trip. On Monday the 25th, we'll meet to learn about his adventure. Tuesday, March 26, 2030. Scott hasn't returned. I don't know what to think. I never fully trusted him. Friday, April 5, 2030. Scott still hasn't returned, and I don't think he ever will. I'm certain he never contacted David. Perhaps he didn't even try. I'd like to think he didn't do anything irreparable to him. Is Scott Evans a current member of the Rainbow Travelers? David wanted to know. Yes, Glenn replied. He always waits during the votes so he doesn't get automatically expelled. Automatically expelled? Jennifer asked. Johnny, our organization is very peculiar, Glenn explained. Our vote is secret, but it's later made public. If a vote ends 14-1, the dissident is expelled. Is that very democratic? David asked, very puzzled. That's very safe, Howard replied. That way we make sure everyone agrees, and no one puts obstacles in our way, he added. Tell us what mistake we made, Glenn asked. You went with David to the Cybernetics Congress. There, you introduced him to Jennifer. Surely Scott, as a specialist, also attended. I think I can guess Howard's reasoning, Frederick said. What Howard is saying is that even though David can't remember Scott now, Scott does remember David. Indeed, Howard confirmed. After being able to read my posthumous letter 4 days ago, my neurons haven't rested trying to close the circle of what happened. Let me continue reading and let you know my conclusions, Howard requested. Thursday, August 15, 2030. The Rainbow Travelers has disbanded. For the time being, all activities have been suspended. I will continue studying what happened. I sense that the definitive explanation is near. I will not give up. Friday, July 23, 2032. I already know what happened and also what will happen. I have checked the body masses of John and David. Your study has opened my eyes. I am convinced that David will return to us. He will, even if it is too late for me. I'll let Jennifer, Leroy, and Martha know. But first, I want to put my conclusions in writing. Conclusions. David tried to save John on his second attempt. We were the ones who established the point of arrival. That's why John Carpenter showed up at my house. My theory is that neither the mass nor the distance to the energy source was the same for both of them. John was the most affected, which is why he arrived first. David only absorbed the rest of the energy, and his journey was extended in space-time. Tuesday, September 21, 2032. I finished my calculations. David will arrive between December 11 and 25, 2042, and there's only one final note left, which I don't think is relevant. It's just the words of an old man who realizes he's reaching the final stretch of his life. I'll read it myself, my friend, Newman offered, taking the letter from Howard's hands. Friday, June 19, 2037. I feel my time has come. I regret not being able to meet David in person. Science and religion have never been enemies, even though they have sometimes held opposing positions. One day you will understand. Hugs to everyone. It was 20 minutes past 9 at night when Newman folded the last sheet and handed it to Howard Moore. Chapter 12. New York, Sunday, January 20, 2030, 9:20 p.m. After the conclusions of my letter and Evelyn's testimony, my hypothesis is summarized as follows, Howard said. David escapes 9/11 in 2001 and arrives in 2029 for the first time. Leroy, that is, Glenn Denvers, saves him and takes him in. David meets Jennifer and they decide to live together. She falls ill with a birth injury, and David decides to return so Newman can operate on her using current methods. We don't know what happened in his first jump to the future, but in the second jump, David tries to take his friend John with him. This changes the parameters of the jump, and John arrives in 2008, very affected, and David doesn't arrive until late 2042. From that moment on, everything is based on Evelyn's story, until David returns from his visit to Patrick Emmerich's. What happened during that visit? Do you have any theories about it? David asked. I don't think Scott Evans knew about the double presence. When he traveled back in time from 2030, Scott was 42 years old. That means he must have been about 13 in 2001. And his original presence completely absorbed him, Glenn said. Physical presence, yes. But being an already formed person, he retained all his mental background, Howard explained. Do you mean Scott was aware of being trapped with no other option than to relive those 29 years? Frederick Newman asked. Yes. And that's why I claim he had plenty of time to prepare his revenge, Howard replied. Against David? Glenn asked. Against David for being the transgressor, against Patrick for being the top leader, and against Frederick for not having foreseen the effect of the double presence, Howard explained. And why don't I remember anything? David wanted to know. When the double presence effect occurs, all the nerves and muscles in the affected body resize to the original presence. When that contraction exceeds 50%, the shrinkage also affects the cognitive memory of each organ. This happens when the original presence is less than 7 years old. That's when the contraction results in the erasure of all memories and knowledge. And do you think that's what happened to me? Do you think I was affected by a contraction greater than 50%? David asked. I'm inclined to think so, Howard replied. Scott Evans waited for you until 2043. He knew he had failed in his attempt to sabotage your second arrival. During the wait, he didn't do anything against his other 2 targets because you were the main target, Howard said. And you think he took advantage of my visit to Patrick to kill 2 birds with 1 stone? David asked. That's right, Howard Moore confirmed. And it only seems to have taken 4 more days to get revenge on me, Frederick Newman affirmed. I have to go, Evelyn said, hugging her mother. You're a sweetheart. I don't know what to say to you, Jennifer replied. What will you do now when you return? She asked next. It's best if Evelyn doesn't tell us anything about her plans. I don't want to give anyone any advantage, Howard said. Evelyn went down the stairs and entered a room. There she pressed the red button on her bracelet. Howard took the opportunity to urge those present to be cautious. He remembered that their opponent had a several-year head start. The clock showed only a couple of minutes to midnight. Chapter 13. Jersey City, Monday, August 3, 2054. How did it go? Jennifer asked. It was a wonderful experience, Evelyn replied. Have you seen your father? Yes, Mom. And I've seen you too. I was able to repeat the experience you had with your mother. I was able to see you before you got pregnant with me. What are you going to do now? Jennifer asked. So far, I've used 3 of the 10 bracelets Dr. Newman sent to Dad. In a week, I'll use 5 new bracelets to travel to Tampa and befriend the rookie flight attendant. What did you tell me the flight attendant's name was? Laura, Mom, Evelyn replied. And then, on August 25, I'll make the final trip using the 9th and second-to-last bracelet. I'll replace Laura and give the chocolate bar to Dad. Do you think he'll be able to decipher the message? I just spoke to him, traveling back to January 20, 2030. That means he's done his duty and is back. Now it's up to the rest of us to protect him. What will you do when you return from replacing Laura? When I return, I'll only have the 10th and final bracelet left. Will you use it? Yes, Mom. You know I plan to use it to achieve the goal I defined in my 6th stage. I'll use it to turn things around. Chapter 14. Jersey City, Wednesday, January 23, 2030. How do you feel? More than 48 hours after the meeting at Howard's house, David asked Jennifer. I haven't been able to sleep these last 3 nights, she said. I haven't been able to sleep well either, David admitted. The problem is that every time I tried to close my eyes, Evelyn's image appeared, Jennifer confessed. And sleep took a back seat to you, David opined. And I also admit that I'm very scared, she confessed. It's not good to be scared because it lowers your defenses, David said. I have the phrase history repeats itself etched in my mind. True, but it was also very clear that the final decision is, and always will be, in our hands, David explained. Can I give you an example that shows that the little phrase doesn't apply to all situations? David said. Yes, please do it, Jennifer asked. If Howard's conjectures are correct, this is the 3rd time I've reached out to you, David said. Let's say so, Jennifer admitted. That would mean there was a 1st and a 2nd time before. Obviously, Jennifer agreed. And for that to have happened, I had to have come back twice, right? David asked. Exactly. She agreed again. Well, Everything indicates that those two returns were very different. The first was the result of my decision, whereas the second was forced and without my opinion being taken into account. Those were also Howard's conclusions based on Evelyn's testimony, Jennifer pointed out. Well, you see, although history repeats itself, it always does so with different nuances, David affirmed. The two of us, on the other hand, have fallen in love again, and we validated that damned little phrase, Jennifer observed. But we haven't quite done it yet, David objected. No? Jennifer exclaimed. No, because if I remember correctly, Evelyn said she was born at the end of November, and we're already at the end of January. I'd really like to repeat that story, Jennifer admitted. Are you referring to the initial prologue or just the final result after 9 months? David asked. Of course I'm referring to the whole story, she replied with a knowing smile. Chapter 15. New York, Friday, January 25, 2030. Howard and Glenn arrived separately at the Cliff House. The meeting had been convened by anthropologist Thomas Brenner. Howard and Thomas had agreed on a strategy. Thomas would present the petition to enforce the current rule of expelling dissenting members by a vote of 14-1. Brenner's presentation would be harsh, and Glenn's unexpected dissenting vote would result in his immediate expulsion. After Glenn's expulsion, Howard would wait 3 weeks and then resign, citing health reasons. The meeting began as scheduled, and the required oath was administered as normal. Thomas Brenner made his presentation, and the vote was taken. Glenn, as second vice president, collected the votes and presented them to President Patrick Emmerichs. The president then read them. The result was 12 in favor and 0 against, when a surprise president read, Glenn Denver's votes against. The result is 12 votes in favor and 1 against. Rick Carter votes in favor. The result is 13 votes in favor and 1 against. The tension was palpable in the room when Patrick Emmerichs read the last vote. Scott Evans votes against. The result is 13 votes in favor and 2 against. The motion presented by Thomas Brenner is rejected. The session is adjourned, the chairman declared. Howard and Glenn exchanged glances without saying anything. Scott Evans was quite clear that the strategic war had begun and that he had the advantage. Chapter 16. New York, Saturday, January 26, 2030. Howard and Glenn met in a very discreet cafe. Do you think Scott voted against the vote to expressly prevent my expulsion? Glenn asked. I've been thinking about it all night. Both possibilities are very complex, and I haven't made a choice yet, Howard replied. Why do you call both possibilities complex? Glenn wanted to know. Because, in fact, they are, Howard replied. Let's first analyze the facts from the perspective that Scott's vote wasn't intended to prevent your expulsion. Are you telling me that it was me, with my vote, who ended up aborting Scott's expulsion? Wait a minute and don't jump to biased conclusions. If that's what you're saying is what happened, he'll be making a move soon, Howard said. I don't see it as being entirely clear that Scott wanted to expel himself. I think he finds it more comfortable to act from the inside with access to all the information, Glenn opened. You know, I've always considered him a retrograde purist. However, that doesn't stop me from thinking he's very intelligent and capable of planning any action in detail. Do you think he's past the stage of belonging to the organization? Glenn asked. I think so, Howard replied. What can we do? Glenn continued. Get ahead of his intentions, Howard replied impassively. How can we find out? Glenn asked again. By being vigilant about his movements and ours. You'll have to warn David, Jennifer, and Martha about everything we've discussed here today, Howard warned. What do you think Scott might have in store for us? I'm afraid whatever it is, it will be a decisive measure to prevent this from becoming an endless loop. This tragic conviction frightens me, Glenn said. It isn't, because we have an advantage that he doesn't know about. Which one? Glenn asked, very surprised. We know he already beat us in another time plane, a direct consequence of the ruse David attempted on his second jump. And Scott doesn't know this fact? He doesn't. I'll try to explain it to you. David makes the first jump according to his own parameters and ends up in practically the same place 28 years later. However, on his second attempt, as a result of the trick he plays on his boss and friend, he modifies the parameters and creates a different sequence of shots. That's why you claim Scott doesn't know that. Scott can't know it in the same way we didn't know it. We know it now because Evelyn told us. Without her, We would never have known, Howard stated. I'm starting to see it all clearly, Glenn acknowledged. It's clear we were the ones who handed him the evidence that David had returned on a silver platter. He must have been very surprised when he saw me at the cybernetics conference, Glenn said. Scott couldn't know if he'd ever meet David again. He didn't know if David had managed to escape a second time, or if he died in the attempt, Howard explained. For Scott, this is David's second coming. He thinks Scott last saw David in the North Tower when he was absorbed by his double presence, Howard insisted. And besides, David Goodwill is on the official list of missing persons in the Twin Towers, Glenn added. That's right, Howard confirmed. I think we've just come full circle, Glenn said, and just begun to play the final game with all the players on the board, Howard affirmed. Tomorrow, Sunday, David and Jennifer are coming to our house for lunch. Why don't you join us? Glenn suggested. No offense, but I'd rather go over everything again on my own. I need the strictest silence. I want to avoid any unwanted surprises. Despite having the advantage of knowing facts Scott doesn't, he's had much more time to plan his strategy, and that makes him extremely dangerous, Howard Moore confirmed. Chapter 17. New York, Saturday, January 26, 2030. At the very moment Howard was declining Glenn Denver's invitation, a few miles away, Scott Evans was vehemently cursing his bad luck. 28 wasted years, he repeated over and over again. After a few seconds of silence, he repeated again. 28 useless years. 28 years wasted. 28 years filled with false hopes and wasted efforts. I can't allow the transgression to be committed and the transgressor to walk away unscathed, he said while pacing in circles like a madman. I won't allow it. David Goodwill is the greatest ethics offender in the history of humanity. His behavior has violated every law. Silence fell again in the room for a few moments. He can't get away with this. Fortunately, I was able to foil yesterday's scheme at the council meeting. In less than 2 weeks, I'm going to put my plan into action. I've finally settled on option C. I know it's the most drastic, but I have no other choice. That means leaving Howard Moore for last. You're going to be the first, my dear, strutting second vice president. But before that, I'll ridicule you on the board. And then you'll come, David Goodwill. I'll get you to stop doing cosmic tightrope walking exercises on the ropes of time. Your transgression will do you no good, because I'll make sure you stay there, right in the place you should never have escaped from. Scott raised his arms to heaven again, and immersed himself in an almost esoteric ritual. First will fall the great concealer, Glenn Denvers. Second, and simultaneously with the first, will be the turn of the transgressor, David Goodwill. Immediately after them will follow the representative of perfect ineptitude disguised as a scientist. I'm referring to the eminent surgeon Frederick Newman, and the final act is reserved for Howard Moore, the false prophet dressed in the garb of a progressive impostor. With these words, Scott dropped to his knees and placed his arms in a cross. When I complete my act of reparation, everything will have returned to normal, and I will savor my victory for as long as I live. Or as the false prophet I just mentioned would say, forever and ever, amen. Chapter 18. New York, Tuesday, January 29, 2030. Howard called Newman first thing in the morning. We need you, he said succinctly. I have the day off today. I'm at your disposal. Perfect. For now. Glenn, Martha, and I are coming. David will arrive on his own since he's nearby, and Jennifer will arrive at 4:00 p.m. In that case, I'll go shopping. I have 2 candles in the fridge, said Newman. Don't worry about the food. We'll order pizzas, pasta, and hamburgers. I'll bring 2 bottles of good bourbon, Howard informed him. I'll have plenty of bourbon, said Newman. See you in about 2 hours. I'll call David to let him know the time of the meeting. Perfect, agreed Frederick Newman. Jersey City, Tuesday, January 29, 2030, 10:50 a.m. David arrived at Newman's house first. Did I arrive too early? He asked. No, not at all. I think they'll take a while, because traffic in the Big Apple is historic these days. Do you know what the meeting is about? Newman wanted to know. Howard must have prepared a strategy after what happened last Friday, David ventured. What happened on Friday? Newman asked, very intrigued. Apparently, Glenn and Howard had prepared a strategy to get Glenn to vote against his will and be expelled so they wouldn't have to report my arrival to the council, David explained. And they didn't succeed? Newman asked. No, because Scott also voted against it, and the expected final result wasn't 14-1, but 13-2. Surprising, but very enlightening for us. I guess things aren't looking good at all. The doorbell interrupted their conversation. Too many problems? He asked as he opened it. None that can't be solved with a good shot of bourbon, accompanied by good friends, Howard replied. Bourbon mid-morning? Newman asked. Doctors don't understand these things, Howard replied. Where do we start? The host asked. I suppose David has given you some background, Howard said, looking at David. I've only given him an outline of what happened, David replied. Enough, Howard said. What we need to do here today is agree on a joint approach. What do you mean by a joint approach? Frederick Newman asked again. 3 essential aspects, Howard replied. The first is to coordinate our communication. The second is to define our current weapons. And the third is to specify a strategy that addresses every crisis situation we can imagine, the theological engineer concluded. This is getting interesting. Please continue, Newman said. I know what I'm going to ask of you won't be easy, but I assure you it's very necessary, Howard stated. Please memorize the number I've given each of you, and also the one I've reserved for myself. Surprise flashed across the faces of everyone present. David, yours is number 3. Glenn, the number reserved for you is 8. Martha, yours is 7. Jennifer has number 6. Frederick, I've reserved 9 for you. And finally, I'd like to inform you that my number is 4. Let me now present those same 6 numbers in ascending order. That is 346,789. You've got us all confused, David admitted. Be patient, friends. I'm trying to explain the plan that will let us know that all 6 of us are okay, Howard said. Are all 6 of us in danger? Martha asked. Are you talking to us about Scott? Glenn wanted to make it clear. Indeed, Howard replied. And I'd like to take this opportunity to inform you that his number is 0. But let me finish explaining the system. This is based on the number of the day we're on. I'll give you an example. Tomorrow will be January 30th, right? Obviously, no one has the number 30, but the sum of its 2 digits, 3 plus 0, gives us 3. That means that tomorrow David will become the coordinator. Starting at 6:00 a.m., and every 2 hours until midnight, he will send us all a coded message. The message must always be a single number. The number sent must be the result of multiplying the time of day by the number of the day, and by the coordinator's number, and then subtracting 1 at the end. Let's do a practical example, David requested. Go ahead, Howard agreed. What number should you send us tomorrow at 6:00 a.m., so we all know you're okay? I'll calculate it out loud. The 6 in the hour of the day, multiplied by the 30 in the day number, and by 3, which is my number, gives a result of 540. And if I subtract 1 unit, the number to send all of you will be 539. Correct, Howard confirmed. Upon receiving it, each of us will reply by performing the same multiplication exercise with our own number. How long do we have to respond? Martha asked. 5 minutes, Howard replied. If anyone doesn't answer or answers with the wrong number, the coordinator will send the emergency message. This message will be the 6-digit number 346,789 converted into a 5-digit number with the missing number of the person who didn't respond or didn't respond correctly. This way, we'll all know about the emergency situation without writing a single word, Glenn pointed out. And if we don't receive the coordinator's message, or they don't respond correctly, we'll all know that the affected person is the coordinator, Newman said. How should we act on the honest 20th and 5th of each month? No one has been assigned these numbers. Who will be the coordinator? Martha asked. On those days, we'll have to add the day number, the month number, and the digits with the year value to define the coordinator. I'll explain this with a practical example, Howard said. Next Friday will be February 1, 2030. On that day, we'll have to add the 1 of the day, plus the 2 of the month, plus the 5, as the result of adding all the digits for the year 2030. The result will be the number 8, and that means I'll be the coordinator, Glenn stated. That's right, Howard confirmed. I chose this system because it breaks the fixed rule of a repeating sequence, Howard explained. Do you think it's feasible that someone could intercept these messages? Martha asked. I'm convinced Scott has already anticipated this possibility. I don't think we can do anything to prevent it. Howard confessed. Do you think his impatience will give him away? Glenn asked. Scott now has confirmation of his failure. I think he'll try to recover as soon as possible. What can we do to prevent that? Martha asked again. For now, eat a little. The food is about to arrive, Newman informed her. Remember to reserve something for Jennifer. She'll come here without stopping by our house. I'm sure she'll be here before 4, David informed. The intercom buzzed, announcing to everyone that the food delivery man had arrived punctually. Chapter 19. Jersey City, Tuesday, January 29, 2030, 3:18 p.m. Jennifer arrived more than 40 minutes early. Who ordered so much food? She exclaimed. It was me, Newman replied. This just means we'll be ordering less for dinner. Are we staying for dinner? The 3 of them too? She asked between bites. The 3 of them are going to stay here tonight. How are you feeling tomorrow? Newman asked. Totally free, Jennifer replied. Perfect, the host said. While you finish eating, Glenn and I will make the coffee, and Howard will brief you on what we've decided so far. Howard explained the system and the keys to numerical calculations. Finally, he told her that her number was 6, and that on Wednesday, February 6, she would be the coordinator. What will happen when we arrive in March? David asked. We won't make it to March. Everything will happen this February, Howard says. I overheard your last sentence, and I agree, said Newman, entering the living room with the tray of coffees. That's right, friends. We don't know which flank he'll attack from, which is why it's so important to know our resources, because only then can we define our strategy. Have you been able to thoroughly study David's bracelet? Howard asked Newman directly. First, I want to inform you that I've named it DG 2034 for reasons that will be obvious to you. And I'm pleased to inform you that I now have 3 operational units. Excellent news, Frederick, said Howard. I'll be able to sleep much more peacefully tonight. These 3 bracelets are also single track. I'm studying how to convert them to double track, but I estimate it will take me about 2 more months. We don't have that much time, Howard opined. Scott knows he must act quickly. Fortunately, he doesn't know we're ahead of him. I take it you're assuming Scott is unaware of my second arrival at the end of 2042, and that he's also unaware of my forced deportation to a time long past of mine. Yes, Howard replied unambiguously. And he's also unaware that it was your daughter who, through her actions as a flight attendant, managed to change the sequence of shots. I'm convinced he believes you've arrived again, departing from the same point as the first time, that is, from the North Tower of the World Trade Center. And what importance could that have? David asked. Answering your question will lead us directly to the third aspect of our meeting, namely, defining the strategy. If it's okay with all of you, I'll answer David, although we haven't yet finalized the second aspect of the resource issue. Go ahead, Newman said, interpreting the other's wishes. I don't know how or when he'll do it, but I'm convinced he'll try to replace David in the North Tower on the morning of 9/11/2001. What will he achieve with that? Jennifer asked. I've always maintained that Scott is a purist. He'll try to keep everything in its natural order. And there's no doubt that the main piece on his game board is named David Goodwill. He'll only use us as a conduit to get the main piece replaced, Howard assured. Now let's get back to defining our weapons. What contribution can each of us make to make ourselves stronger? Whatever it is, Jennifer intervened, it'll have to serve to permanently disable Scott. We have to prevent this from becoming an endless loop. Lately, my professional field has led me to explore the world of the brain, Frederick Newman reported. I've studied brain implants to convert brain waves into concrete commands, always within the field of robotics, Jennifer said. My research has focused on the sequence of nucleotide groups in DNA molecules, Glenn explained. My work is more earthly, Martha said. The last 3 years I've dedicated to identifying the causes of trisomy in chromosome pair 21. I won't tell you about my theological research in the scientific field, because it's not relevant, Howard stated. Everything you've explained is very interesting, but I'm leaning toward delving into Frederick's and Jennifer's experiments because I believe they are complementary, Howard reported. I think I can guess your intentions, you old fox, Newman said. They are not exactly my intentions. I must admit that Jennifer was very explicit when she spoke of permanently deactivating Scott. That should be our main goal. Just thinking about it makes me ravenously hungry, and then relax with a good bourbon, Howard reported. Just one? The host asked. You always start with one, and then, only God knows, a smiling Howard said. And then everyone goes to sleep, Dr. Newman recommended. Sleep repositions and regenerates our neurons, and it's also the passive inducer of our best ideas. Chapter 20. Jersey City, Wednesday, January 30, 2030, 6:00 a.m. David sent the first message as coordinator. The other 5 members received the number 539 as proof that everything was in order and under his control. The response messages followed one after another. Even Jennifer, who was standing next to him, sent him 1,079. I'm going to make some coffee, David said. It's lucky to have Howard on our side, she said. I'm sure he hasn't slept in and already has a plan in place, he predicted. Her abilities don't diminish in any temporal plane, if the letter Evelyn brought us is anything to go by. We haven't talked much about her, David said. I'm inclined to, Jennifer acknowledged. I'm afraid we're not in the right temporal plane, she added. Don't worry about that. She's already met with us. And besides, she's familiar with the theory of the double presence. Are you sure? Jennifer insisted. Absolutely. By the way, you were sublime yesterday when you asked for Scott to be deactivated. I don't think my words were very subtle, she said. It's 15 minutes to 7. We should leave now to get to Frederick's house on time, David pointed out. I'll be ready in 2 minutes, Jennifer affirmed. When David and Jennifer arrived at Newman's house, the host and his guests were still having breakfast. 4 people are a lot for one bathroom. We're a little late, Newman reported. When they finished breakfast, they all went into the living room. Once they were settled, they waited for Howard to speak and take the initiative. I've made some decisions tonight, the theological engineer said. The first is to tighten surveillance on Martha and Glenn. Why? Glenn asked, very surprised. And why don't you tight it against me? Jennifer asked. Because Scott is a purist, and in his purist reasoning, he couldn't care less about what might happen to an individual in a time before they've even been born. A bit far-fetched, isn't it? Newman said. If we want to beat our adversary, we must try to think like he thinks in order to anticipate his actions. Now I want to return to the topic of brain implants. What else can you contribute to this topic? I don't want to interrupt, but it's time to send you number 719, which corresponds to 8:00 a.m., David announced. In less than 30 seconds, he received the 5 coded responses. Newman took the floor to respond to Howard. The discovery of biocompatible materials has allowed us to achieve goals that were once unimaginable. These biomaterials have marked the beginning of biomedicine and biorobotics, Jennifer added. I'm going to ask you both a question, Howard announced. Can we create some kind of implant that filters an individual's memory, allowing them to remember only what we want and erasing the rest? Yes, Frederick Newman replied. How long would that implant last? About 10 or 12 years, Newman replied again. The solution to extending the effect of any implant is to be able to recharge it periodically, Jennifer asked. What can you contribute to this? Howard asked. In robotics, the solution has been a second implant that reabsorbs the consumed energy, regenerates it, and feeds it back, so that the first implant is always fully charged. Does anyone know if Scott is right or left-handed? Newman said. Scott is right-handed, Glenn confirmed. In that case, we could place the main implant in the left temporal lobe and the recharging implant in the parietal lobe on the same side, Newman suggested. Do you agree with Newman? Howard asked Jennifer. Yes, she answered succinctly. How long will it take you to be 100% ready and operational on this matter? 10 days, Newman replied, with Jennifer's acquiescence. Where are you planning to perform the implants? Howard asked. In my lab, Newman replied. Just as everyone received the coordinator's message with the number 899, it was 10:00 a.m. I've already defined the strategy 100%. Allow me not to make it public now and limit myself to giving you some recommendations. We're listening, Howard, Frederick Newman said. I don't think it will happen. But if Scott decides I'm the first, everyone will move to this house immediately. I don't think David will be the first choice. But if he is, Jennifer, don't even go near your house. Come here directly. One of you two will have to travel, Howard announced, looking directly at Glenn and Martha. Be prepared, because that action will be the Gordian knot of our strategy and our ultimate victory, Howard stated. You, Frederick, We'll have to find an excuse to skip work and dedicate yourself fully to preparing the implants with Jennifer's help. Now we just have to wait for Scott to make the first move. Glenn and I are going to provoke him at the Rainbow Travelers. I want him to be forced to act quickly. And to provoke him, I'm going to need the cooperation of Jennifer and Frederick. You can count on us, they both said in unison. In that case, that's it. I'm ending our meeting, Howard declared. Chapter 21. New York, Saturday, February 2, 2030, 8:00 p.m. Howard and Glenn arrived at the Cliff House 2 hours early and placed the nanomodem hidden in one of the columns, which would capture the images transmitted by a microcamera hidden in Howard's glasses. The receiver transmitter was in Glenn's car antenna, and from there, the encrypted transmission would be transmitted to a receiver decoder located in Newman's basement. Jennifer, Martha, and Frederick would be able to follow the council meeting live. The meeting began promptly at 10:00 p.m. Distinguished Council, Glenn Denvers began. In accordance with Section 7C of Article 23, I request the immediate reprimand and expulsion of Scott Evans for withholding relevant information from this council. You won't get away with it, Scott said. What are you basing your accusations on? On the private conversation the two of us had, which I recorded as irrefutable proof of your wrongdoing, Glenn responded. Recording? Conversation? What are you talking about? Scott said. I recorded everything because I knew you wouldn't admit it. I asked the council to listen and decide, Glenn requested. The president ordered the recording to be made public. All members put on their headphones. This recording is a setup, Scott shouted when he finished. Under these circumstances, our bylaws allow for a vote by show of hands, the president announced. I request that those of you who agree with Scott Evans's preemptive expulsion raise your hands, he asked. From the Newman basement, it was clear how all the members, except Scott, raised their right hands. Perfect work, Martha said. Excellent, Jennifer agreed. In the chamber, the president delivered the desired sentence. Scott Evans, you are hereby expelled from this council. You have 15 days to present your objections. This session is adjourned. I promise I will destroy you, Scott shouted as everyone left the chamber. 15 days, Scott repeated in his living room. I'll make them think I'm preparing a plea, but what I'm going to do is put my plan into action. Scott took 2 immobilizing collars from his closet. After petting them, he connected them to the power charger. I need you at full power to return David Goodwill and his accomplice to their rightful place, Scott Evans declared. Jersey City, Thursday, February 7, 2030, 4:10 p.m. Jennifer and David arrived at Frederick Newman's home. The host and Howard were waiting for them. For the past 7 days, we've been conducting cognitive tests on 2 guinea pigs we've named Alpha and Beta. The tests have yielded conclusive results. We've monitored their brains using functional magnetic resonance imaging. The implant has adapted perfectly to their brains, with the goal of blocking their memories. Just one question before we continue, Howard said. Can guinea pigs regain those memories? Yes, definitely, Frederick replied. But if they can go back, David tried to object. They can only recover them if they're the result of new experiences, which will never happen with Scott, because it's impossible for him to relive the experiences we're blocking, Jennifer explained. But we have a servitude in this successful process, Newman said. Which one? Howard asked. We were successful with the guinea pigs because they had fresh memories, and so we were able to identify the waves that generated them, Newman said. Are you suggesting that we have to wait for Scott to act before we can identify the links in his memories? Howard asked. That's right, the surgeon confirmed. I was afraid of something like that, Howard admitted. I'm not sure why, but I was afraid of it. I don't think it changed our plans, Newman opined. It doesn't change them, but it does affect them. Now, I must rule out acting prematurely. How many bracelets do you have in operation? Howard asked. I have the 3 DG 2034s with an added upgrade and 2 standard round-trip ones with a 2-hour jump duration, Newman reported. What's the added upgrade? David asked. I've added a black button that allows you to change location from where you are to another where the coordinates have been previously entered, Newman explained. I need all 5 bracelets, Howard told Newman. I'm going to get them, Newman informed him, leaving the room. Howard took advantage of Newman's absence to speak with David in Jennifer's presence. You should think about the escape coordinates, David. You have to choose a safe, uncrowded location, he recommended, and no further than 2 kilometers from the exit point, David specified. It's better if you reduce the distance to less than 1 kilometer. When you've decided, I'll enter them into the 3 bracelets with less than 10 meters between them, as if they were the 3 vertices of an equilateral triangle, David said. Exactly. That's why it has to be a large, open space. I've got it now. I'll find the coordinates and send them to you. Send them to me by registered express mail. It's the safest way, Howard said. Okay, David agreed, just as Frederick returned with the 5 bracelets and handed them to Howard. It's impossible for you to get confused, Newman said. The DG 2034 ones are wider than the standard ones. Don't worry, I won't get confused, Howard affirmed. Chapter 22. New York, Wednesday, February 13, 2030. 6 p.m. Howard Moore sent the alert message, numbered 34,679. The absence of the number 8 in it indicated that Glenn hadn't responded to the 2:0 p.m. message. Moments later, Martha called him, distressed. He still hasn't responded, she asked. He hasn't, Howard replied. Do you know where he's gone? He received a message from Emmerich's, inviting him to a conciliation meeting with Scott, Martha explained. It was a trap, Howard stated. Just stay at home and prepare the basement. David will pick me up. We'll see each other in 90 minutes. I'm very nervous. I don't know if I can, Martha said. Yes, you can. You've become the key to the plan. Prepare everything. You did very well in rehearsals. The rehearsals were just rehearsals, she replied. Think of Glenn. He will give you strength, Howard advised. Jersey City, Wednesday, February 13, 2030. 2:10 p.m. Scott had the Emmerichs couple immobilized. Glenn began to regain consciousness. He managed to get up from the floor with great difficulty. You can sit in that sofa. Don't try any other movement or I'll completely paralyze you, Scott threatened. You're a dangerous madman, Glenn managed to articulate. I just want the rebel piece on the board to return to the place it should never have left, Scott explained. Who's the rebel piece on the board? Glenn asked, following Howard's instructions to bring back memories in Scott's mind. I'm going to take this couple to bed and put them to sleep. You take off the clothes you're wearing and put on the ones I'm leaving here for you. Glenn tried to rebel, but the caller only allowed him to do what Scott had instructed. He noticed that only 12 minutes had passed since his arrival. There was very little time for someone to come to him aid, despite the signal emitted by the heel of her right shoe. New York, Wednesday, February 13, 2030. 4:21 p.m. At the same moment, Scott parked his car, with Glenn inside, on the ferry that would take him to Staten Island. David and Howard arrived at Martha's house. Anything new? Howard asked to Martha. The location signal has stabilized. The coordinates are those of the Emmerichs' home. I was sure it was a trap, David said. Have you prepared everything? Do you remember everything you have to do? Howard asked. Do you remember the exact location of everything? David insisted. I'm very nervous, but I remember everything, Martha confessed. I have the map and the drawing you made me perfectly memorized, Martha replied. When you return, rest for half an hour before leaving again. You need to successfully complete the double time jump. The final result depends largely on you, Howard said. I will follow your advice to the letter, Martha assured him. We'll wait until you've left before we leave. Good luck. Thank you both, she said, going down to the basement. There, she entered the coordinates and information for the first destination. Date. Tuesday, September 11, 2001. Time. 2:37 a.m. Latitude. 40 degrees north. Longitude. 74 degrees west. Altitude. 356.9 meters. Then she pressed the red button on her bracelet. New York, Wednesday, February 13, 2030. 5:26 p.m. Scott's rented house on Staten Island was very far from the island's urban core. I'm sorry to leave you in this state, but I have no other choice, Scott said, immobilizing Glenn. Glenn couldn't move or utter a word. He could only watch as Scott left the house. Scott felt the fresh air, took a deep breath, and smiled. The time to capture the rebel had arrived. Jersey City, Wednesday, February 13, 2030, 6:12 p.m. Howard and Glenn found the Emmerichs sleeping. The two old people couldn't remember anything. When David gathered Glenn's clothes and shoes, he saw an envelope sticking out of his back pocket with a phrase written on it. To the transgressive traveler. I'm sorry I woke you, Howard said as he said goodbye. When they were alone again, David informed Howard of the letter. Please open it. We can't waste time. We might have a chance to, Howard began to say. The expression Howard saw on David's face as he began to read the letter prevented him from finishing his sentence. Chapter 23. New York, Tuesday, September 11, 2001, 2:40. Martha opened her eyes. Her mind began to process and recall each of the instructions David had given her. The destination coordinates are those of the power plant located on level 95 of the North Tower. You have more than enough time to carry out the mission, but you must coordinate your movements very precisely. Every hour, a patrol is conducted, beginning on the hour, that is, at minute 0. The surveillance team we're interested in consists of 2 guards. One checks floors 90 to 99 on foot, and the other monitors the images captured by the first guard with his shoulder-mounted camera. The guard on patrol spends 4 minutes per floor ascending and only 2 minutes per floor descending, and he never enters floor 95 of the power room. That pace means the inspection of floor 99 will end at minute 36, and then begin its descent. That means, on its descent round, it will pass in front of the door to floor 95 around minute 44, and won't pass there again until minute 20, on the ascending round the following hour. You'll have enough time to go down 2 floors to floor 93, leave the wristbands in the second left drawer of my desk, and then go back up the 2 floors to floor 95. Keep in mind that when you enter the stairs, a sensor will activate the light. Therefore, I recommend that you don't go down until the security guard has finished his rounds and joined his partner. This will occur at approximately minute 52. Marta looked at the digital clock as the luminous digits indicated 2:48 a.m. She decided to wait, even though her nerves urged her not to. When the digits indicated 2:53, she opened the door. When she entered the stairs, the lights came on, and her heart sank. She went down to the 93rd floor and located David's desk. She sat down in the chair, opened the second drawer on the left, and placed the 3 DG-2034 bracelets that Newman had given Howard. Marta again remembered David's recommendations. Once you've placed the bracelets in my drawer, you must coordinate your ascent with that of the security guard. The lights take 90 seconds to turn off after being activated. The security guard must always be the one to activate the lights. It takes him 40 seconds to ascend a floor and enter it. You should use the remaining 50 seconds to ascend a level. Personally, I don't think you should risk climbing both floors in one attempt. Martha slightly opened the door to level 93. The lights were on, and she decided not to risk it. She waited until the lights went out. The narrow opening in the door allowed her to see that the lights had come back on. He held his breath, counted to 50, opened the door, and headed upstairs. He repeated the process on level 94 and reached level 95. When he entered the energy room, he felt as if he had been reborn. He looked at his wristwatch. Only 37 minutes had passed since his arrival. The time remaining on the jump was 1 hour and 23 minutes. He positioned himself at the exact starting point and pressed the red button. The experience had been more stressful than dangerous. Jersey City, Wednesday, February 13, 2030, 7:41 p.m. David began reading Scott's letter aloud. This should stay between you and me. You know perfectly well this isn't your place. For that very reason, and to avoid collateral damage, I expect you to follow my instructions to the letter. Tonight you'll take the ferry from Battery Park to Staten Island at 1:30 a.m. The trip takes about 25 minutes. When you arrive, wait for the payphone to ring. Follow the instructions you receive over the phone. See you soon. What do you think? David asked Howard. Actually, we have to accept that we're in one of the situations we anticipated, Howard said. I hope Martha returned successfully from her first jump. David hoped aloud. She did. I have a message from her confirming it. Why didn't you tell me? David wanted to know. I received it while you were reading the letter, Howard replied. Do you know if she's already departed on her second mission? She hasn't yet, but she won't be long. Martha is tougher than granite. Living next door to Glenn, that's proof of that, Howard affirmed. That comforts me, David confessed. Now it's your turn. It's your turn, Howard said. Scott considers you the key to his project, but he doesn't know that you're also the key to ours. We have to resolve this once and for all if you want to live the rest of your life in peace with Jennifer. I'm going to go talk to her, David said. I have time before we take the damned ferry. I hope we're right, David sighed. We're right for many reasons, but above all, for one very special reason, Howard wanted to make clear. Which one? David asked, eager to find support. For your daughter, Evelyn, Howard Moore stated simply. Chapter 24. New York, Monday, September 10, 2001. 3:33 p.m. Martha walked leisurely down Park Avenue. It was clear she was enjoying her walk. She had just completed her second jump to complete her second mission. Her target was the JTD headquarters. There she was, to deliver 2 letters to their recipients by 8:00 a.m. One of the 2 letters was addressed to Howard Moore. He had written the letter himself in February 2030. It included a code certifying his authorship. The second letter had David as the sender and his mother, Evelyn Goodwill, as the recipient. Martha didn't know the contents of the letters. She was only to deliver them to the JTD. She entered the JTD and emerged 4 minutes later. She had delivered the letters and completed her second mission. She headed toward Central Station on 41 Street. She entered a women's restroom and pressed the red button. She headed toward Central Station on 41 Street. She entered a women's restroom and pressed the red button. Jersey City, Wednesday, February 13, 2030. 10:14 p.m. Be very careful. I don't want to lose you, Jennifer said, tears in her eyes. I'll get it. Everything's ready. Howard just sent me a message. Martha has returned from her second successful mission. I'm going to get the polyolefin solution I need to inject you with. Are you ready? She asked. How will that fluid work inside me? He asked. The olefin polymer I'm going to inject will coil around the nucleotide groups of your DNA and create a perfect replica of the molecule's double helix. Will I notice anything? David asked again. You won't notice anything, Jennifer assured. I'll inject the fluid, devoid of information, but fully active to receive it. It will collect all the information your body generates or receives. Are you sure Scott can't figure out that my blood fluid will act as a loudspeaker for his intentions? Scott has no way of finding out. Even if he did a blood test, it would only detect a slightly elevated fat content. How long will it take you to extract the information once you have my blood sample? David asked. No more than 6 hours. The process is very simple. Do you believe Howard's plan with his idea of intertemporal transport of the blood sample? David wanted to know. I think it's perfectly possible, she opined. And if I don't make it back, he said, lowering his gaze. You'll come back. Don't doubt it for a moment, she assured him. I want you to know that I love you and that everything I'm going to do is only for you, David confessed. Well, I want you to do it for the 3 of us. Evelyn is already on her way. Today is the 6th day of my missed period, she said as the 2, or rather, the 3 of them embraced each other. New York, Thursday, February 14, 2030, 12:40 a.m. New York, Thursday, February 14, 2030, 12:40 a.m. David took the ferry to Staten Island on time. When he arrived, the cold was intense. He located the only phone booth and waited. If he takes too long calling, he'll find me frozen, he thought. The call didn't come until 3 in the morning. David speaking, he said as he picked up the phone. Walk toward the light, a voice said. David saw a light in the distance that seemed to be receding. Suddenly, his vision blurred, and David fell to the ground. The light approached. Hands placed him inside an SUV. New York, Thursday, February 14, 2030, 7:41 a.m. When David opened his eyes, he found himself sitting in a chair, unable to move, and Glenn in front of him. Neither of them could speak. You passed the test with flying colors, Scott said. My scanner didn't find a single microchip in your body. You're a man of your word, and that pleases me. David couldn't respond. realizing that it was going to be a very difficult task to extract information from Scott. "I'll explain what we'll do," Scott said. "When I press the red button on your wristbands, I'll send you to 9:50 a.m. on 9/11. You'll appear on the roof of the North Tower and be able to see the collapse of the South Tower live." David began to calculate. If they appeared on the rooftop at 9:50 a.m., they had 38 minutes until the North Tower collapsed at 10:28 a.m. If they subtracted 3 minutes, they would have 35 minutes to descend 18 floors, reach their desk, open the drawer, put on their bracelets, press the black button, and escape from their new location. Scott continued to explain to Glenn that his case didn't matter. "You'll be reborn, and we'll meet again," he told him. "Turn to the transgressive traveler," he said, looking at David. "Your situation is different from Glenn's. This time, the antenna power room will not be operational. You won't be able to escape." "Oh, I almost forgot about your question time," Scott said mockingly. "I'll let the supporting actor speak first." "You're crazy," Glenn said when he was able to speak. "Turn consumed," Scott said. "Now let's move on to the main actor. What would you estimate is the percentage I have of making it out of the North Tower alive again?" David asked. "It pains me to answer your question, but I will. I think the percentage is below 0.000001. In that case, wouldn't you mind telling me where I can find you if that minuscule possibility becomes a reality?" "You've always been a braggart," Scott said. "The only one bragging is you," David insisted. "If you're so sure." Scott disappeared furiously. 2 minutes later, they appeared with a plane ticket. "All I know is that this will be my first leg. What comes after that is yet to be decided." David read the ticket information aloud. Route, New York, LaGuardia, Rio de Janeiro, Galeão. Date, February 16, 2030. Time, 5:30 p.m. Class, business class. "Satisfied?" Scott asked. "See you at the airport," David confirmed. The chatter was over. "Have a safe trip, both of you," Scott wished, pressing the red buttons on his wristbands as the clock read 7:52 a.m. Chapter 25. Jersey City, Thursday, February 14, 2030. 8:15 a.m. "Any news, Martha?" Jennifer asked over the phone. "Nothing so far," Martha replied. "This is starting to get to me," Jennifer admitted. "I must be feeling a little weird because I haven't gotten my period yet." "That's great news," Martha exclaimed. "Have you told David yet?" she asked afterward. "I did yesterday, before he took the Staten Island ferry." "In that case, I'm sure the bottle will turn up," Martha confirmed. "Check again," Jennifer asked. "Sorry, nothing yet," Martha reported 2 minutes later. "That's not a good sign," Jennifer opined. "We don't know how long Scott has kept them. We don't even know if they've started their journey yet. I'm sorry I can't be with you now. Howard's instructions don't allow it." "Thank you, Martha," Jennifer said before hanging up. New York, Tuesday, September 11, 2001. 8:00 a.m. The JTD delivery men knocked on Howard and Evelyn's Goodwill door at 8:00 a.m. Howard didn't flinch when he read that he was the sender. Evelyn was shocked at how she had received the letter. Reading it sent her adrenaline soaring. "Mom, drop everything you're doing. Call a taxi immediately. Dress in your favorite color. Ask the taxi driver to take you to the Plaza Hotel. Don't get carried away by what happens. A Chevrolet will pick you up in front of the Plaza Hotel. The driver is a friend of mine who will show you a sign with your name on it. For the love of God, please listen to me. I love you, Mom. David." While Evelyn called the taxi, Howard Moore read the letter for the 3rd time. "I've always wished for a moment like this. I hope I can express myself coherently. I know you and I are the same person, but I'll try to forget that we are one. I'm writing to you from the year 2030. The secret code that connects the two is 16,182. The first thing you need to do is prepare the false bottom of the spotlight in the shape of a basement hatch. Once you've done that, take your car and go to the Plaza Hotel. There, you'll pick up a woman in her 60s. Show her a sign with her name written in it. Her name is Evelyn, and she's the mother of the person from whom you'll need to take a blood sample. The meeting point with this person, named David, who will arrive with a companion named Glenn, will be the intersection of Central Park and 72nd Street. They know the Chevrolet's license plate. I gave it to them. I want you to know that something terrible will happen today. When the four of you are together in the Chevrolet, return home, take the blood sample, and place it in the false bottom of the hatch. Then, leave them alone in the basement. They will disappear from your world and travel to my time. I will meet them, and you will have witnessed an exceptional event, even if you can't tell anyone about it. I don't quite know how to say goodbye to myself. Thanks for everything, Howard. Howard went down to the basement and prepared the false bottom. Then, he went up to his office and labeled the name Evelyn on a sign. He got into the Chevrolet and headed for the Plaza Hotel. There, he showed the nameplate. A woman got into the Chevrolet. "What's going on?" she asked. "I don't know. I'm just following orders," the driver replied. "Whose orders?" she asked again. "I'm sorry, but I have no way of answering your question," the driver replied, just as the United Airlines plane hit the South Tower. It was 9:03 a.m. New York, Tuesday, September 11, 2001, 9:53 a.m. The rooftop of the North Tower was a chaotic mess of people out of control. "Come on, Glenn, we have to go down," David said. "Take off Scott's bracelet," Glenn shouted as they went down and saw that the antenna power room was destroyed. A huge crunch of metal announced the collapse of the South Tower as the two of them reached level 101. It was 10:05 a.m. The descent was becoming increasingly difficult. They reached level 98 at 10:14 a.m. It had taken them 9 minutes to descend 3 floors. Glenn thought quickly and didn't hesitate. He broke open a firebox and unrolled the hose, dropping it down the stairwell. "Follow me," Glenn said, lowering himself down the hose. David emulated his partner and descended 2 floors in less than 2 minutes. They repeated the process on levels 96 and 94 and reached level 93. David arrived at his table at 10:21 and grabbed the 3 wristbands. He handed one to Glenn, put the second on, and put the third in his pocket. Then they both pressed the black button simultaneously. It was 10:23 when they disappeared from the North Tower. They reappeared a minute later amidst a large pile of debris and began running without saying a word. 4 minutes into their frantic run, the North Tower collapsed. It was 10:28. "If we hurry, we'll reach the rendezvous point in just over an hour," Glenn said. At 10:58, they reached Union Square. At 11:37, they passed through Columbus Circle, and just 14 minutes later, they arrived at the rendezvous point on 72nd Street. David was able to hug his mother at 11:51. Evelyn Goodwill couldn't stop crying. Howard drove the car to her house. He took the blood sample and placed it in the agreed-upon location. "Do you want to come with me, Mom?" he said, putting the bracelet on her. "Sure, son. Where are we going?" she asked. "It'll be easier to explain when we reach our destination." Howard said goodbye to his 3 guests. He left the basement and went upstairs. "I'm going to count to 5, Mom. When I get to that number, the 3 of us will press the red button. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Howard blew a kiss to the sky. He closed his eyes and tried to absorb all the richness that the last 5 hours had brought him. He was convinced that what he had just experienced would help him plan a winning strategy for the future. Chapter 26. New York, February 14, 2030, 10:25. "The sample just arrived, Jenny," Martha reported. "My heart nearly stopped when I saw the sample in the hiding place." "Wonderful news," Jennifer said. "I'm going to tell Frederick and Howard, and then I'm going straight to Frederick's house. I have a key," she clarified. "Are you calmer now?" Martha asked. "Moreover, the fact that the blood sample arrived indicates that they've come out on top. When you talk to Howard, tell him I'll pick him up in 10 minutes. See you at Frederick's house," Martha said. Jennifer arrived first at Frederick Newman's house. Frederick arrived 15 minutes later. "How much longer?" he asked. "No, I've got everything ready," she replied. It took Martha and Howard another 40 minutes to arrive. "Congratulations, Jenny." "Hello, little Evelyn," Martha said, gently stroking her friend's belly. "Congratulations," Howard said. "Same here," Frederick quickly added. "Thank you all, but the moment of truth has arrived. Let's get to work," Jennifer said. Jennifer extracted all the conversations stored in the layer covering the DNA molecules. The desired information surfaced at 15 minutes to 6 in the evening. David's voice was heard saying, "Travel, New York, LaGuardia, Rio de Janeiro, Galeão. Date, February 16, 2030. Time, 17:30. Class, business class." "We have him," said Frederick Newman. "Not yet, but we'll get him," Howard corrected. "We have almost 48 hours left," Martha said. "Have you prepared a strategy?" she asked, looking at Howard. "First, I'd like to point out that we now know who will use the third bracelet," Howard said. "You'll be able to meet your mother-in-law," Martha said quickly. "What pleases me most is that the two Evelyns will be able to get to know each other and benefit from each other," Jennifer replied. "And the second is that we have to tell you something that you two don't know," Howard announced. "I thought there were no secrets between us," Jennifer said. "It's just my responsibility," Howard agreed. "I asked Frederick to include a 72-hour arrival, delaying Chip in the 3 DG 2034 bracelets. Why did you delay his arrival?" Martha wanted to know. "I know Glenn very well. He would have wanted to make Scott pay in kind. An eye for an eye style vendetta." "You're right," Jennifer finally agreed, thinking of David. "I think they'd be more of a problem than an asset for the operation to neutralize Scott," Frederick admitted. "When will they arrive?" Martha asked. "My calculations are that they'll arrive at Martha and Glenn's basement between 12 and 2 p.m. next Sunday, February 17th. Martha and Jennifer accepted the delay, convinced that it was a wise move for the smooth running of the operation to capture Scott Evans. "Let's get back to the strategy," Howard said. "Frederick and Martha will take care of the capture since they're strangers to Scott. And while we two do this, what will we do?" Jennifer asked. "Set up the basement operating room. The operation should begin as soon as Frederick and Martha arrive with him." "What do you have in mind to capture him?" Martha asked. "My plan is as follows," Howard began. Chapter 27. New York, Saturday, February 16, 2030. Scott arrived at New York's LaGuardia Airport 3 hours early. Frederick and Martha were already waiting for him. Frederick pretended to be engrossed in a book. Martha, for her part, looked spectacular. Howard had recommended that they communicate only through prearranged gestures, without using text of any kind. Scott sat down and began scanning communications. His screen filled with data that was impossible to control. Frederick looked up and pretended to be focused. It was the agreed-upon signal for her to take action. She stood up and smoothed her skirt. After turning her back on Scott, she bent down, pretending to search for something in her purse. Scott shifted his gaze from his laptop to Martha's bottom. Frederick closed the book, stood up, and began walking. As he passed behind Scott, he dripped a few drops of paralyzing liquid on his shoulder. Martha disappeared from the scene and headed for the restroom. Within seconds, Scott felt a burning sensation and ran his hand over the affected area. This reflex triggered the paralysis. His laptop fell to the floor, and Scott fainted. "I'm a doctor," Frederick said, showing his ID. "Call an airport support person," he asked. "Here comes someone in a wheelchair," someone announced. "Where's the recovery room?" Frederick asked. "On the lower floor." The girl in the wheelchair answered. Frederick, Scott, and the fake assistant entered the elevator, but they didn't stop on the lower floor. Instead, they went down to the underground parking lot and left by car. The plane to Rio de Janeiro took off 10 minutes late without one of the passengers with a reserved ticket. Since there was no luggage in the plane's hold, current security regulations didn't prevent it from taking off normally. At 7:00 p.m., the surgery began in the makeshift operating room in Frederick Newman's basement. An hour and a half later, Jennifer and Newman left. "Double implantation process completed," said the surgeon. "Did everything go well?" Howard asked. "Everything went according to plan," Jennifer confirmed. "Now we need to prepare the simulated accident. I'll draw your blood and inject it superficially to make it look like bruises," Frederick told Howard. "We've already done that for Scott," Jennifer informed him. "The accident will occur on a wooded road near the hospital where I'll be on call," Frederick said. "I'll receive and care for the 2 injured people. After 4 hours, I'll release Howard, but I'll keep Scott hospitalized for 3 weeks to make sure everything remains on track." "Everything's ready, isn't it?" Howard asked. "All set," the other replied. Well, everyone plays their roles. See you tomorrow at 11:00 a.m. at Glenn and Martha's house. Chapter 28. New York, Sunday, February 17, 2030. Frederick was the last to arrive at the Bronx house. Howard looked horrible. His bloodshot eyes had oxidized and darkened, and he was the butt of every joke. At 1:03, 0 p.m., the first sign came. The first to appear was Glenn. Have you caught that bastard yet? He asked. We caught him and neutralized him yesterday, Howard reported. Frederick has him completely under control. And David? Jennifer asked, her heart sinking. He's downstairs trying to explain the inexplicable to his mother as best he can. I'm going downstairs, Jennifer said. The first thing she saw was a mother and her son crying on each other's shoulders. Without a second thought, she joined them. Half a minute later, Martha came down to the basement to take an active part in the crying and tears. With their spirits more relaxed, the four left the basement. Jennifer continued to hug David's mother. Upon reaching the main floor, Howard spoke. You shouldn't worry, Evelyn. Don't try to understand everything at once. Progress only comes if you push it. And that's what we've decided to do. Do you remember Howard, Mom? I think I recognize his voice, but I can't place it, Evelyn said. It was Howard who picked you up in front of the Plaza Hotel and then took you to 71 Street to meet us. Evelyn looked at Howard and after a long silence, asked, How is it possible that the three of us haven't aged? But he has. You could say I've taken the normal path, and the three of you have taken a shortcut, Howard replied. Do these kinds of shortcuts really exist? Evelyn asked. Being able to discover them was the reason for my study and my continued confinement in my room, David pointed out. Why didn't you tell me everything? Evelyn asked. Because you would have seen me as even more of a freak, David replied. My friends, I'm going to practice medicine. I suggest we leave Martha and Glenn alone. Howard's prescription is for a few days' rest. I'll go to the hospital and keep an eye on our favorite patient. And I'm not forgetting Jennifer, David, or Evelyn. My prescription for you is to talk, and talk. I recommend that on your return to Jersey City, you take a walk around the New World Trade Center. Often, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Thank you, Frederick. You're absolutely right. I have something very important to tell Evelyn. I dare say it will make her very happy, Jennifer said, kissing David's mother. Chapter 29. Jersey City, Monday, December 18, 2034. Mom, what's wrong, honey? Jennifer replied. Where's Dad? He's sleeping, honey. Dad's resting. I dreamed he had left and wasn't with us. Jennifer went to look for David. It's already happened, she whispered in his ear. What will you do now? Act as normal as possible. We knew this would happen. Be careful, David. She'll be having contraction now, Jennifer said. Don't worry. We've always had everything prepared, David replied, entering the little girl's room. Dad, you're here. Of course I'm here. I thought you weren't there, little Evelyn said. Go back to sleep, honey. Dad will take off that bracelet you're wearing. It clearly didn't work. We'll give it back tomorrow. Evelyn fell peacefully back asleep, while her parents looked at her, absorbed in their thoughts. She did it, David said proudly. But now she won't remember a thing, Jennifer said. And she doesn't deserve to ignore it, he added. You're right. When she's old enough to understand, we'll tell her everything, David said. She won't believe us, Jennifer pointed out. She will. Don't worry. We're her parents, he assured her. It's true. We are the parents of the most wonderful creature in this world, Jennifer stated emphatically. I agree with that, David admitted. Eyes filled with emotion watched the scene from the threshold of Evelyn's bedroom door. Both her son and Jennifer had warned her that what had just happened would happen. She had never fully understood what they were explaining to her, but she had come to accept it. What she did know was that she had a wonderful granddaughter. She retreated to his room in silence as well. He preferred to let them experience the moment, alone. Back in his room, he blew a kiss to heaven. For my granddaughter. For Evelyn. For her. End of the third novel of the trilogy, A Past, Present, and Future, by Francisco Zaragoza Esbrí.